And I will tell you exactly where Henner and I were. Like our whole corner, Henner, myself, Tiki, Paul, we're not supposed to stand up, right? We're all professionals. We've been doing this for a long time. That moment, we all stood up because we were like, it's a lock. Because it's not just he's going for a choke. He had it deep. Every angle we look, we're like, it's there, and it's holding on. It's not getting out. So kudos to Alex. Like that shows his championship medal. That he even said like he saw the belt slipping away.
Jason, first off, appreciate you coming on. First, we haven't talked in a while. Just wanted to get an update on like some personal stuff. Like where are you working now? You know what I mean? Like where do you usually work at? Are you freelancing more with yourself, or is there a central location for you?
Yeah, so the main locations I'm working at is Blackhouse MMA. That's the majority of our pro MMA fighters are training there. Boxing Works is also a second home for us, which is right down the road. And that's where we have so many more avenues of different strikers, including my own coach Brian Popejoy and our stable of fighters Janet Coakley or Janet Todd, Jackie Buntan, as well as many other fighters who fight in USA Muay Thai. Um, People can find me for strength and conditioning as well as physical therapy at Myo Detox, which is in Brentwood, as well as West Hollywood. I'm at the Brentwood location. So yeah, usually it's in the West LA and South Bay regions.
Wow, so you're bouncing around every
Yeah,
day, all
yeah,
week, right?
of course, every day.
But you love it though.
Of course, and I love it because it's really amazing to be able to focus on the human movement, right, in all three capacities. So I always talk about like, understanding from a strength and conditioning standpoint, understanding how to maximize strength, maximize mobility, improve power and speed, as well as a doctor of physical therapy to help people go from rehab to be able to prevent injuries and anticipate the things that they're going through while they're in training camp, but still also be able to serve in a very rarefied position of being a striking coach as well, where now we're dealing with the skills and still staying in touch with the intensity of the sport.
Definitely. And you've been working with a lot of fighters over the years, and you're working with a lot of fighters now. Let's get in particular with some of those fighters. You have the Twin Dragons, some of the two fighters that I've been big on for the last couple of years. And are you working with both of them or only Josh?
Well, John right now is still recovering from an injury and he's just building himself back up. So I'm sure you'll see him in the near future. But Josh has been having a very busy year. He's preparing for another busy year. He's fighting on March 25th at LFA. So you guys will see him soon. Yeah, he's both of them are phenomenal talents, and Josh is taking it to another level in preparation for a big year in 2022.
What makes him so unique, Josh? I see you working with him and posting certain videos, and I watch him. He's so smooth, man. He's like Michael Jackson on the mats, man.
I think what it is he's been a lifelong martial artist, right? And this is something that I feel kindred with him as well, in that I also started as a child training Taekwondo when I was young. And then when at the age of 15, I changed over to Boxing Works and started training boxing and Muay Thai and almost divorced myself from Taekwondo so I can really immerse myself in these other two martial arts. And in my coaching experience at Black House, I just had so many diverse types of strikers that it started to pull those things from karate and taekwondo back and knowing how to mix it organically. And so when you see someone like Josh who has grown up training in different striking martial arts his whole life, right? And his coaches were very smart in training both of those things from a very young age for him to actually be one of the few guys in the States I see that can compare to guys in Europe and in Japan where you don't really know which martial art they started with. It's blended so well together. He can change rhythms, he can change footwork, and it's not a trick. It's just organic. And and I think the thing that everyone gets so surprised with is he's phenomenal on the ground as well, training with J Flow for his wrestling, and he's been doing that for years, as well as with Johnny Faria for his jiu-jitsu Alliance. So, he's a whole package.
Both of the twins, they've had a long amateur career too, and I feel like it's paying dividends as they step into the
Hmm.
pro ranks. Josh has been pretty much flawless. He's 4-0. All his
Hmm.
performances have been great. This upcoming matchup, right, for LFA, what do you see out of him? What can we expect?
Well, I think you see it every single time that he's just getting better. He's staying calm. He's understanding how to be more tactical. He's such a fast fighter, and that's what I always tell him is like, be patient, take your time. Like your talent is there, your skills are there. Don't force it, don't rush it. Just enjoy the moment. And that's what, experience really is. People with a strong amateur record, right? And especially when you see guys coming over to UFC who have fought in IFMA, have fought at Glory, have fought in different organizations, and are coming over with a small MMA record, you could see their calmness, you could see their discipline, you could see their concentration, and things don't sway them as much, right? One thing I will always point out is like how Alex Pereira made his debut in the UFC. Everyone's like, "Oh, he's getting taken out," but you could just see he's not breathing hard, he's staying calm, he's waiting his time, and the other guy's wasting all his energy. And you saw in the second round when he knew he was ready, lights out. So that's what you see in Josh is that he has that calmness, that composure.
For sure. And John, when is he gonna be back in action, do you think?
I think we have a few people that we're talking to kind of figure out when we're going to make that move. So for that, we'll say to be determined.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
And Tabitha Ricci, I've seen that
yeah.
you've been working with her, and she also has a fight coming up, a UFC event on May 21st versus Polyana Viana. How has it been working with her the last couple of months?
Oh, I mean, it's been fantastic. Like, she's been at Blackhouse for the last 2 years. She's been training at Paragon with Frangina for such a long time. And she has such a strong core of coaches that work with her, and for her, I gotta say, she's so disciplined. She's such a workhorse that, she's one of the joys to work with because it's our job as coaches to almost tell her, stop training today, go home. We never have to encourage her to have to train. She's always overtraining, working so hard, and that just shows her drive. So it's been a joy to work with her, from 2021 and now going to 2022. And I think, what you saw in her last fight when she actually had time to prepare for that fight, you just saw a whole different level come out of her, especially when she was on the ground and she started working her ground and pound. And that's what I think you're going to see more and more. Her striking is there, but really to see her wrestling and jiu-jitsu, people haven't even seen that yet.
Where do you see her strengths in her stand up?
You know, she, you know, I found out recently when I was down with her at Ruka that, she's like, oh, this is actually my first martial art, with striking. And so, she just has that sense of where to place her head and how to throw shots from different angles, right? Knowing how to go straight, know how to go from rotational shots. And she just has a very intuitive sense of it. So she's a force of nature.
Yeah, with her, I'm excited to see her development. I mean,
Hmm.
she has a long time. This is gonna be a pretty long camp for her because May 21st. Usually, you see a fight announced like maybe 2 months in advance. A month in
Hmm.
advance. But nowadays,
Yes.
you get like 4 month preparations if you really want to. So yeah, we're gonna see big things out of her. Now moving on to you're wearing the sweater, man. Anderson Silva. We seen him killing it, in
Yeah,
boxing, and it seems like guys don't want to fight him in
of
boxing.
course. Well, hey, this is just a second coming of what we already seen in the UFC. People avoided him. once people see his drive, his desire, his passion all come back, especially in that Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight. And then again with Tito Ortiz, you see that, this is not just a payday for him. He's a lifelong martial artist. He loves training, competing daily. It's not just an act, not just for camp. He's training every day. You could see it now. Like I'm so happy to see him sharing more of his training with his sons, and I think it's a marvel to watch, have everyone see what he's doing with them. So yeah, so I think things are coming soon. He's definitely taking his training to a different level. So yeah, pay attention. He's going to do some amazing things in 2022.
Could we ever see him in Muay Thai, do you think?
He's told me that he's wanted to compete in Muay Thai as well. I think after such a long time in MMA, and especially in the UFC, I think he's just really invigorated to be able to practice different martial arts, like in its own unique way, instead of having to just train for all of them all together. So he's expressed to me that he loves the idea of training jiu-jitsu, training judo, training Muay Thai, training kickboxing, training boxing, and really just being able to compete in different martial arts again. He even talked about wanting to go back into Taekwondo for competition. So it just shows how his mind, his imagination is so strong that he wants to really be a lifelong martial artist.
Yeah, he is. He is. He's an inspiration, man. I think with what Israel Adesanya is doing right now with his reign, it reminds the people that actually watched the sport back when Anderson was at the top of the division, at the top of the UFC, at the top of the entire sport, how incredible, it was to be able to watch Anderson Silva in real time. It was like watching Michael Jordan in the 90s. You watched Michael Jordan in the
Exactly.
90s.
Exactly. And that's the perfect analogy. It's the blueprint. Like every NBA player now is inspired, influenced by Michael Jordan, right? From LeBron James to Kobe Bryant to Steph Curry. It's no question now that every fighter in the UFC is inspired and influenced by Anderson. That's one thing I remember, like the first thing Uriah Hall said all fight week when they had that final fight for Anderson. He's like, that's the blueprint. That's what showed us the way that we can be here. And I remember Israel, I forgot which fight that he finished at the time. I forget if it was Costa or I forget which fight it was that he just defended his or had his final fight. But he was stuck in the United States, so he wanted to come and was there ringside for Anderson's final fight, and he said the same, like that's the blueprint, that's the guy.
Style bender. He is a bender of styles, man. Like he is a unique adaptation. You know what I mean? Like he is very separate from every other fighter, even from Anderson.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Anderson was his own entity. What do you
yeah.
see in Stylebender and his style and what he has done so far in the UFC? Like, how impressed have you been?
I think it's fantastic because I've been watching Israel even before he went to UFC when he was fighting in kickboxing for all those years, and he has that mix of passion, dedication, and you know showmanship, right? Which is something that we all want. That's what we fell in love with Anderson, and you see that Israel understands that. He understands that that is part of his responsibility to be a showman as well as a skilled executor of his abilities. So I think he's doing a fantastic job. I think even from his first few fights in the UFC, right, when he made his debut to really hitting a stride when he fought Anderson, he fought Kelvin Gastelum. That's when my respect for him grew to another level. To see him step up. One of the fights that I think I always point to is that fifth round in the Kelvin Gastelum fight when he made his choice to really stand in his ground and not just rely on his skills, but actually put it down in the cage. And I mean, I get chills thinking about it, and you just see that he has taken it to another level. I mean, even just watching his fight this past weekend, I saw things that I was like, oh, I've never seen the footwork, the stance switches, the way he's done it. It made me have to take a second glance at it. So, um, I love how he's progressing his style, his game.
Speaking of someone that has progressed his style and his
Yeah,
game, one of your guys, Brian Ortega. You know what I mean? We saw him, when he came back from the Max Holloway fight, just incredible striking, and then he continued it in the Volkanovski fight. He didn't come
yeah,
out with the win, but he did show that he is a transformed fighter. Even after that, because sometimes the guys will come back after a loss and perform well, and in that fight after that, they revert to their old self, right? They
yeah,
kind of just jump back to it, and Brian did not do that in that fight. He showed that he has consistency in his development. You know, the 25 minutes of fighting, you were cage side. What
yeah.
did you think of how the fight played out?
Looking at like, especially in you know, one of the hardest things is, of course, the fight kind of got away from us in the first two rounds, right? We just started a little slower. We were missing our timing. It just took a little bit longer for us to just find that next gear, right? And that's always going to throw things off from a grappling standpoint, from a striking standpoint. And in that third round, everyone counted Brian out. In that arena, in the commentators, like looking at Twitter after the fight. But I think what Brian showed was the type of fighter that he is, and it's not just heart, is that he also has that ability to recognize when he has an opportunity, and that led to why it's fight of the night, right, or fight of the year contender. Um, and I think what you saw, one of the hardest things, just Brian's had a really rough go of 1 year waits between fights, right? And I think that does play into it. That's why he's so excited to get busy, and just have more frequency in his fights. And those things were out of his control, right? Max Holloway, he was supposed to fight him earlier that year. Max Holloway had to pull out, so they had to wait another 6 months until December. Same thing with the fight with Korean Zombie. Brian himself had an injury in his knee, and so he had to push that back. And then again with the title fight, we were supposed to fight in March, and then last minute, I mean, and this is nothing against As Volkanovski, because we know that this is part of what we're all going through. Is he had COVID, and that delayed the fight as well. So I think that's one thing that played into why it took so long to kind of get going, and why we kind of fell behind, like a step behind in the first couple rounds. And but you saw how Brian resolved, third round, fourth round, just even kind of picking up the pace and starting to pursue Alex in the fifth round. There's no quitting that guy.
And arguably the biggest moment of that fight was Brian holding that choke in the mountain position, and everybody I talked to doesn't understand how Alex got out of that choke, because Brian is the master of that choke. Brian is like, that's his thing, right? To
Yeah,
choke people out. And Alex just, people said that he was breathing out of his asshole, like that's
yeah.
how like he has that incredible skill. In that moment, like how tense were you,
Oh,
that round?
I think everyone in the stadium, but I think both corners, like every single person at the edge of their seat. And I will tell you exactly where Henner and I were. Like our whole corner, Henner, myself, Tiki, Paul, we're not supposed to stand up, right? We're all professionals. We've been doing this for a long time. That moment, we all stood up because we were like, it's a lock. Because it's not just he's going for a choke. He had it deep. Every angle we look, we're like, it's there, and it's holding on. It's not getting out. So kudos to Alex. Like, that shows his championship medal. That he even said, like, he saw the belt slipping away, as things were darkening up, and he just found a way out. Yeah, we were not just at the edge of our seat; we were standing.
It was one of the best moments, one of the craziest moments of the year. With
Yeah,
all the events that go on, that is like the highest level, the most on the line, just intense, crazy moment. I think everybody was on the edge of their seat. If you're a Brian Ortega fan, if you're a Alex Volkanovski fan, if you're not even a fan, you were on your feet at that moment. That was a crazy moment.
I think what 2021 really showed is that featherweight division is no joke. That is the division to watch. Every guy in there is a killer, and uh, as a coach who, the division I follow the most are obviously the ones that my fighters are competing in. So it's an absolute joy to study that division because it's Muay Thai, and I mean not Muay Thai. It's martial arts mastery right there. Yeah, it's beautiful to watch.
Yeah, and Brian, like I feel like he's just starting his peak. You know what I mean? Like he's had 2 title fights already, and a lot of people want to count him out, but you can't count out Brian, man. He's still young,
No,
he's still
yes,
developing, and I feel like he's just hit the beginning of his prime. So we don't know
yeah.
what's gonna happen in the next couple of years for Ortega. He doesn't seem like he's gonna slow down anytime soon either. So I'm excited to see him come back. And there's rumors about him coming back later this year against Yair Rodriguez. You know what I mean? Like, what do we know about these rumors? They're rumors, so we don't know if they're 100% true. But have you heard anything?
No, I haven't heard anything yet. I know it was all over the news yesterday, but I haven't heard anything yet. So I'm just excited for that one as anyone else. I think everyone wants to see Yair fight, and you know that's going to put eyes on the show. Mexican versus Mexican American. That's a very exciting fight as well. One thing I will say about Brian is, when we were in Abu Dhabi for that fight with Korean Zombie, one of the things I told him was, yeah, he might have hit 2.0. We thought that he was prepared to show a different level of himself. But I told him this is only year one of our 5-year plan for him, right? And I think you heard him say that during fight week, and it's the truth. He's just getting better and better. He's training with different people. He's learning more and more of the overall game. People don't know, like, he he never really watched many fights. You know, coming up to his fight with Holloway. So even studying fights, watching how people compete, watching film, that's new to him. So if you saw a lot in the last couple of years, you're going to see more in these next few years.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, this rumored fight, between Ortega and Rodriguez, it gets people excited. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it's a great stylistic matchup. You know what I mean? Like, who would not want to see this, especially with the advances of Ortega's striking and what Yair brings to the table with his wild style, that Taekwondo background, man. You probably
Yeah.
looked at Yair Rodriguez and said, "Man, I see some of those things, man. I know some of those things. I've done some of those
Yeah.
things."
Well, look at Yair with his fight with Zombie, and especially with the beat. Or not with the beat. Sorry, that's the one that I want to watch. Right, I wanted to watch that fight for such a long time that it's at the forefront of my mind. But with Max Holloway, right? Like, man, what a phenomenal talent! I can't wait to see him back in the cage. And if it's against us, we're welcome for it.
Jason, man, thank you so much, man, for taking the time
Of
to
course,
speak with me, man. And we'll catch up again in the near future as
of
your
course.
fighters come out, and we see you in the corner more and more often.
Yeah. It was nice to have a little bit of a break from November to now, but now everything's booking up, so I'm excited to get ready. We're already in full camp. Now it's just time for us to execute. So I'm excited for this year, and it's always a pleasure to be here with you.